Thank you. Good day to you all, and thanks for joining us here on SIG-Apps on November 21st. We've got a bit of a different schedule for today. Instead of doing demos, I'll kind of give us all a high-level overview of the SIG-Apps meeting that we had the day before KubeCon, and then there will be an opportunity for any of us to jump in and talk about what we learned at KubeCon or share our thoughts. So just if you have something you'd like to share, there will be an opportunity to go about doing that. And then we'll go into our status updates. We've got several exciting announcements today and several big updates. So we'll do that. And after that, we'll have an opportunity to have open discussion, anything you'd like to talk about as a group. So the SIG-Apps in-person meetup, I think, went quite well. We had a little under 40 people show up throughout the course of the meeting. We started off with an icebreaker to get to know each other. We then split into a few groups. Paul Morey led a group on config map management, which kind of evolved into a conversation around how people use patterns when it comes to, or what kind of patterns have evolved around using config maps. And there was also a stateful set discussion. And so pet set is now called stateful set. And we also had a discussion around Helm and the roadmap for Helm after the 2.0 release. So that's what we went about discussing there. And then in the next week or week and a half, I'll ask each of the leads of these groups to mail out a summary of what they learned and what they talked about and kind of what the action items were, so then we can further discuss that in the next few meetings. We also learned a bunch at KubeCon. I was pretty blown away by how many people were attending the conference, or in attendance in the conference. We had, I think it was 1,080 tickets were sold. There was a wait list of 300. So it's kind of ridiculous how this community has grown, and even how the SIG-Apps community has grown. And to have almost 40 people show up to the in-person meeting, I was really quite surprised and excited. So we got a chance to go get to know each other there, but if you weren't there, at the end of this call, we'll have some time as well to do introductions. If you weren't at the SIG-Apps meeting and you want to introduce yourself, feel free to do so then as well. So with that, Matt Farina, do you have something to add about the SIG-Apps meeting?
I guess the only thing that I'll add about the SIG-Apps meeting, for those of us who were there, Michelle, thank you for such an interesting icebreaker. And for those of you who don't know, Michelle actually created an icebreaker, which is, please feel free, I guess I would say, to reuse this, where she created a hash for everybody's name on a card. And then we had to go around the room with bits to go help us solve the hash or the encryption to decrypt the person's name in order to find them to ask a question. That was an incredibly unique icebreaker, and I liked it, and I'd suggest others use it as well.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you. Thanks for that feedback. I enjoyed that as well. I didn't know that it was going to go as well as it did, but I had a lot of fun. Also, I created a little program to hash the names. I did not do that by hand, so that was not too bad. So yeah, thank you. Does anybody else have something they'd like to share, either learnings from the SIG-Apps meeting or comments about KubeCon in general? Did we have fun? Did we go? Nobody? All right, we're being shy on Monday morning.
So, Michelle, what kind of things did you want to talk about when it comes to, what kind of comments are you looking for?
More of just in general. More in general, things that you found interesting, sessions you found interesting, things you like to see in SIG-Apps being shown or talked about more.
Well, I'll jump in with something that caught my attention. When it comes to conferences, there's, infrastructure conferences like this for Kubernetes. You have running and operating and standing up that infrastructure, they're developing it, and I saw those things. But a lot of times you'll find things that are outside stuff that enable the ecosystem or deploy apps and do it, or just they're those ecosystem enablers. How am I, what tools or things am I using to help me run my applications in my infrastructure platform? Just kind of that outside ecosystem bit a little bit more rather than plug it at the infrastructure level. And I really didn't see that this year in the way that I would expect. And so I'm wondering if it's going to come next year. I'm wondering what are the things that would sit in that space, and are there gaps? Are there companies that exist there? What's going on with that space?
So you're not seeing the ecosystem around Kubernetes?
Not to the extent that I expected, right?
Okay.
So how many companies have showed up that dealt with processes of deploying and monitoring and adjusting applications running in Kubernetes, right? Of just doing something with that. How many just like even their dev tools and how their dev tools deploy to it. We've heard about CI processes here a little bit. But there are a whole lot of other ones and a whole lot of other tools, and they don't see those integration points or folks there talking about them. And so I'm curious about that. It was a whole lot about standing up and operating Kubernetes, and not as much about deploying and operating my apps into it.
I just want to echo that same sentiment, that I wish there was more highlighting. It's not so much that I don't think there's a lack of work in integrating Kubernetes with regards to apps. I just think people aren't sharing this information. If anyone attended Sam Goad's talks from Box, they highlight some of the ways that they do deployments of the applications themselves, and some of the libraries that they leverage to make their lives easier with regards to deploying Kubernetes applications in terms of various environments. And so that highlighted some key differential ways you can do it in terms of deploying applications. But I think it's more of a sharing issue than a focus of work. It's definitely being done. I mean, folks are using Kubernetes in production internally. It's just the reluctance to share, I think, is what's inhibiting us from kind of seeing more of that.
These are really great points. I wonder if we can try harder to pull some of those folks in to SIG-Apps to kind of give us. We've had a few people come in and do that kind of presentation. I wonder if we can get some more. I wonder if there's any hesitation to sharing that kind of information.
I can see some hesitation because things are a little bit early, and so maybe folks don't want to necessarily throw something out there for fear of the community. Not saying it's a pattern, it's an anti-pattern. I mean, that could just also be a one-off also. Ideas out there, so maybe why people are not sharing.
You're breaking out a little bit. Would you mind repeating that last part, Mike?
Sure. Is this better?
Yes.
So I was just going to say it's more of the fact I think that people are maybe concerned with the manner that they're using Kubernetes is not the community best way, and I've noticed that with regards to customers that we've talked to, that they may be a little bit shy because of their unfamiliarity with the project and with the platform, that they're afraid to maybe developing anti-patterns. Again, probably not the case for most folks. But just throwing an idea out there to trying to understand the problem.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as well. So maybe we can try to pull those folks in, kind of encourage them to share here if we can. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Thanks for bringing that up, Matt Farina, and thanks for joining in, Mike, as well. Does anybody else have something they'd like to share about KubeCon? All right, well, if you think of anything, we can...
I was on mute. I have something else.
Go ahead.
Did anybody else look at all the federation work that was happening with federated Kubernetes? It really, it brought up to me an area that is new, interesting, and has a lot of tough or a lot of questions that aren't documented or have common practices. For example, you deploy an application to two on-prem data centers, hardware-based, and yet you're sharing storage between the two, or between a public cloud and on-prem. Of course, working for HPE, I have to deal with the on-prem. And how do you deal with shared storage between these things coming in from the back end? And federated Kubernetes doesn't have a GA release, but it's pretty close. And so what features need to be filled out? What other management features would be useful in that layer? I see it as being really useful, but very new, with lots of interesting that can still be built on it. Did anybody else go to the Federation sessions and see all that stuff?
I've been following it. And as far as I can tell, storage is just kind of out of band at this point. So if you have stateless applications, or if you're replicating your storage outside of Federation mechanism, then you can do things like cloud bursting, you can do failover between data centers. But I haven't heard a lot of clamor for doing the storage replication. I think that might be something they just don't consider their mission at this point. Maybe it will be eventually.
Yeah, and it may not be their mission, but for some of us, it's the full thing. And so I'm just curious to see how that works, especially when you get up to things like petabytes of storage. How do you do stuff like that?
I mean, I think the real challenge around federating, and I think the best use case that I can think of for federation is cloud bursting, or being able to just be cloud agnostic and move between public clouds or between your private cloud and public cloud, depending on costs and reliability and all those variables. But I think the real challenge is, I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit puzzled. Like, it's useful in some cases, and it just doesn't cover others. And the main problem in my mind is, like, if Google and Facebook and Microsoft, they all have like dedicated links between data centers. If you don't have that capability between public cloud and dedicated cloud, or different public clouds, like, what's the value in being able to cloud burst? Like, your replication speed is going to be limited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of what ifs there, and that's why I say it seems interesting to me, because some of this stuff happens. I mean, companies cloud burst today from their on-prem data centers. Their enterprises are doing it today. So if you layer Kubernetes in, and is there a way to do something better or more interesting? I think it's the unknown. So I'm an R&D guy. I like doing the research and figuring out the problems in that. And so that's why I say it's interesting to me. It's new, it's shiny. It has some useful features today, but there's a lot of unknowns that are kind of fun to go chase after.
Are there specifics beyond storage that you're curious about?
Oh yeah, lots of them. Like, exactly like you said, the dedicated links between data centers. What do you do, and how do you handle, say, private installations that aren't public? Is there some kind of bursting that can be done there? Some of the stuff that we talked about there were, how do you deal with policy-based? And this was in the Kubernetes, the Thursday development session, where they talked about policy-based. So what if you need to make sure that you send it to your federated API and say, you can only run this workload in Canada? And say you've got 2 data centers in Canada, some in, all throughout the rest of the world. And so your federation API says, oh, I'm only going to federate this out to those. Is that something that should happen? That was considered interesting in the federation session there.
Kind of interesting. I mean, it's not really technically very complicated. It's just a scheduling issue, but
yep.
Yeah, okay.
Farina, thanks for bringing up federation here. Are there any other topics that were interesting and kind of stood out at KubeCon for anyone?
This is Matt Butcher. Some of the sessions I went to and really enjoyed were the ones that focused a little bit more on securing clusters. In particular, I went to one by some people who worked on clusters for banks, and it was really interesting to see how Kubernetes how the ecosystem around Kubernetes has really taken a lot of this stuff more seriously. And so that I enjoyed quite a bit. Having gone to the developers summit, and this is going to reflect my particular bent, I'm sure, but I too noticed a lot of people saying their biggest questions that they wanted to get answered in the near future was, how do they recommend that developers focus on using Kubernetes as developers move forward and become more cloud native, right? So the developer workflow problem, the communications problems between DevOps and development teams, or operators and development teams, giving developers access to information about the cluster and how to do that strategically so that they can actually get information, useful information out. Those were all interesting topics that I felt like circled back around, not just during KubeCon, but during the developers summit afterward. I think that's basically just echoing what Matt Farina said earlier.
Yeah, thanks for that. I definitely think that there would be a lot of value in bringing in some developers to ask them questions about their workflow and where their challenges are when it comes to developing applications in Kubernetes and deploying it to production. Any other topics anybody would like to share?
I have one. I don't know if anybody caught it. Comcast did a presentation late on Wednesday where they talked about how they were managing streaming, and not just like on-demand streaming, but actually delivery of all video content through Kubernetes. And this is, to me, is interesting because it kind of deviates from the stated like purpose of Kubernetes, or like the goal of enabling application developers, because this is very much like a system level thing. And I think that a lot of the decisions that get made, you know, in some of the SIGs that I've been participating in, like say SIG Network or the Node, like they're focused on application workloads, like more traditionally focused, which is, you know, maybe more what this SIG is focused on. And to see like some of the stuff that people are doing totally outside of that is kind of interesting. They're not really supported well by the community today, and maybe they shouldn't be. I don't know, because I mean, you can't do everything. But I still thought it was interesting that people were doing such, I don't know, out of generally accepted scope things.
Did you? So are you talking about the session where they talked about their 10 data centers, their thousands of physical servers running Kubernetes? They had, what, 6 services plus some back office stuff, and it was their cloud DVR?
I'm not sure that was it, because it sounded like they were not actually using it as a DVR. They were actually using it just to deliver like a live stream.
So the session that I went to, they talked about, it was their Viper product, which deals with their cloud DVR, which has crazy legal requirements, right? So every time somebody records a show, they have to keep an individual copy associated with that person. And so if 10 different people record the same show, or 100 different people, you got to keep 10 or 100 copies of it. And then when you serve it to them, you have to serve them their copy. Because this is all legally set stuff. And so the system that I was in the Comcast, one of their Comcast sessions, I guess, they had 300 gigabits per second of egress. They got their developers to do logging really well, 100 gigs of logs per day per site.
I think the session, either I was completely just oblivious to all these details, or the session I was dealing with was more like low level technical, not like the high level, here's a huge system. It's more like the low level of how it was implemented.
Interesting.
Cool, thanks for sharing. Anybody else have something that stood out to them? All right, and Matt Butcher in the comments said, the Linux Foundation and CNCF deserves a huge shout out for organizing KubeCon. It was tremendously well organized and was also a really welcoming event. And I would absolutely agree with that. So with that, let's go ahead and move into the status updates. And if you've got something to share and you think of it, you're welcome to add it in later during open discussion, or send it out in the mailing list. And again, we'll send out what actually came out of each of the groups on the mailing list in the upcoming week. And the videos for the KubeCon sessions are already online, and I believe Matt Farina shared them with us in chat. Okay, so Matt Butcher, are you ready to give us a Helm update?
Sure.
Thanks.
We had a small piece of news last week. We released 2.0 finals. Yeah, oh man, what a relief that was. So we are now actively working on 2.01, which is just bug fixes, and the 2.1 branch, which will be the next feature release coming up, probably January, given the holiday schedule. So going into this week, we're going to be very light on core contributors because a lot of people are traveling for U.S. holidays. Thanksgiving is Thursday and Black Friday is the day after. So we probably will be well below our usual velocity and code commits, and probably not as responsive as we like to be in the Slack channel. But then the week after, we're going to pick back up and continue working on the 2.01 release. That's all I got.
Thanks, Matt. Really excited about the Helm release. Lahi, can you give us an update on the Kubernetes charts repo?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so just a quick update from the charts repo. I think we have 21 charts in stable now, which is a great result. I think we added Prometheus last week, and that chart's got a lot of eyes on it now, so it's only getting better day by day. I think probably large topics in the PRs at the moment is moving all the alpha notations on storage to beta and refactoring all the pet sets to stateful set. So you'll see that they're actually in the incubator at the moment, so there'll be a concerted effort around refactoring those as we go into 1.5. And seeing a lot more uptake. So we have 28 open PRs. A lot of people are just fixing things and adding their own little bits of creativity to the chart. So we obviously welcome that. And yeah, if anybody's looking to add any charts, it's a call for anything that you think is interesting. I think this adds to the community. So anybody who's contributed so far, thank you very much. And everybody who's interested, feel free to come and join. And if you want to start reviewing charts, we're happy to help you with the review process as well. So that's it from the charts repo.
Thanks, Laki. And just to add a few things here, 28 PRs is a lot. That's awesome. And then second, I've had a lot of people reach out and say they're just going into this chart, and the thing that they're changing is making, one piece configurable that they need. And so if it's even something as simple as that, that's that kind of contribution is very much welcomed. Lucky, there was a charts best practices document that was being worked on a few weeks ago. Do you know anything about that? Do we have any updates on that?
Yeah, let me dig that up and post it in the chat. There was Helm Create has created a lot more robust standard setup. So thank you for whoever worked on that. I know Matt Butch has done some more chart authoring, best practices and some guides around that. And we're obviously we look every week at how we're doing the technical requirements for stable. So there's still a little bit in flux there, but it's fairly robust now. But let me find the link and I'll post it in the chat for those interested in chart authoring.
All right, thank you for that. All right, so is someone here to give us an update on the on stateful stat? I think Clayton couldn't make it to this meeting. He'll let us know beforehand, so we can just touch back on that next week if no one's here from that team. Sebastian or Tuna, are you around for a compose update? I don't see them here either, and that's okay. How about app controller team? Are y'all around?
I'm here. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So last 2 weeks we had some steady progress in App Controller. We are adding features and we merged some quite nice refactoring. So now it's much easier to add new types of Kubernetes objects support to App Controller. So following that, we will provide support for deployments, which I think are the most missing stuff in App Controller. And later on, it will be much easier for contributors and our team itself to add new object type support to App Controller. That's basically it, and steady progress there. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Great news. Thank you. All right. Any questions on status updates, Helm, Compose, or not Compose, I guess right now, but App Controller or chart repo? Okay. There are, I guess this is now time for open discussion. So does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up and talk about?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does anyone who develops apps that you guys know of, like, do they have any desire or need to develop against a multi-node cluster that doesn't involve actual nodes? Have something that'll just deploy on Minikube and actually give you a multi-node Kubernetes cluster, so you don't have to actually have VMs or anything like that. I don't actually know if anybody, I don't know, useful, not useful.
Is that something you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it ties together a bunch of other things. It's not like a huge amount of work, but.
Okay.
Do you mean it for development purposes or for deployment, for some kind of small deployment purposes?
I mean, basically anything that needs a multi-node Kubernetes cluster, but you don't want to necessarily have to, maintain the cluster or anything like that. You can bring it up in a few minutes and tear it down trivially.
I'm using Dint for this, Docker in Docker. I can link to repository in a minute.
I think the advantage of this is because it uses Helm to deploy, you can actually have as many clusters as you want. And you can trivially scale the number of nodes just by changing the replica count and the node deployment. So it has some advantages over Docker and Docker. You can obviously do the same things with Docker and Docker, but you have to write bash script to manage it, whereas this just uses kube primitives and Helm and things like that. So it's a little bit easier to maintain.
Yeah, I was looking at the code for Nkube last week, and I had a use case for this when we were working on Deis workflow. Things like stateful sets and daemon sets, it's really hard to test that they're doing what they want if you're trying to bind them to nodes unless you actually have nodes to bind them to. And it looked like this might be one way to kind of test, particularly with daemon sets, test that it's spreading the way you expect and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Demo.
Yeah. Can you do a demo of Nkube for us in one of the SIG-Apps meetings?
Sure, I'd be happy to do it whenever. I mean, really, it's a matter of checking out the repo, having Minikube and Helm, and running start. That's about it. But I'd be happy to do that, and then somebody else can talk in the 3 minutes it takes to deploy, and I can say done.
That'd be cool. And also maybe if you could deploy an application, maybe have a use case, that'd be really helpful too.
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, I should say that the primary motivation for me is that I've worked on the OpenShift networking team for quite a while. And so toy single node deployments don't do the job when you're trying to validate network capabilities and connectivity and stuff like that. So the nicety of this, from my perspective, is that it gives people an opportunity to work with a real, actual cluster that has connectivity, that has multiple nodes, that sort of stuff, but does it in a way that's trivial. Because I mean, it's certainly getting better. We have more deployment options and they work more reliably, but VMs are never going to be as reliable as containers just because there's fewer moving pieces. Anyway.
Great, thank you. Any other topics somebody would like to discuss or bring up?
I have a quick one.
Go ahead.
I've noticed that they've changed over the CLA only to be Linux Foundation this weekend. So just for anybody who's committing code, just take a look and make sure your Linux Foundation CLA is in order. Seems to be tripping quite a few people up.
Thanks for the heads up. I had not realized that the change had finally come through.
It had been on both for a while. You had to have both the Google and the Linux Foundation CLA signed. It looks, as of today, I noticed that there's a bunch of new PRs and they're all failed on CLA, and I took a look and the change is finally just Linux Foundation, at least on the charts repo. I can't speak to all the repos.
Kubernetes itself, I just looked, does not have the Google CLA listed there anymore as a check.
So just as you're contributing code, make sure that you see your Linux Foundation CLA is in order.
Thanks, Lucky. Anybody else have something? All right. Okay, if you were not at the SIG-Apps meetup, or even if you were at the SIG-Apps meetup, if you'd like to jump in right now and introduce yourselves, that'd be great. Maybe tell us your name, where you work, and maybe a fun fact or something. That'd be awesome. And I'm going to call somebody out just to start this whole thing. So Maru, I believe, I don't know if that's exactly how you pronounce your name, but would you mind doing a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. So my name's Maru. It's like Peru, but with an M. I work for Red Hat on OpenShift. And I rollerblade everywhere. I rollerbladed in Seattle. I've rollerbladed all over Asia and Europe. I never leave anywhere without my skates.
That is so cool. Maru, what's your time zone?
I'm Pacific, Bay Area.
Okay, just curious. Somebody want to go next? All right, I'll call people. That's cool. Matt Fisher?
Yeah, I'm Matt Fisher. I am based on Vancouver Island, BC. I'm 24 and probably one of the youngest people at Deus at this time. And I work for 2 different time zones. So, yeah.
Thanks. Anybody else? Zen?
Okay, hi everyone. Zen is actually a nickname, so my real name is Tomasz Napierala. I'm based in CET in Poland, and we have I'm working for Mirantis, by the way. We have a team of developers working in different areas of Kubernetes, and I'm actually managing all of those people and trying to help.
Awesome.
That's it from me.
Thank you. Matt Borsma?
Hey, I apologize for lurking so much. I'm just trying to keep abreast of what you guys are doing. Hopefully I'm not a total stranger. I gave a demo here a few weeks ago. I work at Deus. I'm the team lead on the workflow group, and I don't know. I play trumpet and banjo and drums. There you go.
Nice. Thank you. All right, I'll stop calling people out and then let people volunteer. Does anybody else want to volunteer to introduce themselves?
Sure, I'll go. Hey everyone, I'm Mike Metrall. I'm a product architect at Rackspace. Been doing some Kubernetes stuff for like the last 2 years. And I live in LA, California, and an interesting thing about me is I like to pretend that I'm good at golf.
That's awesome. Anybody else want to go?
I don't want to be the last Matt to go, so I'm going to go before Farina because we already had two other Matts. I'm Matt Butcher. I'm also from Deus. I work almost exclusively on the Helm project these days. I live in Colorado, which puts me on the mountain time zone. Interesting fact about me, my username is Technosophos, which comes from the Greek word techne, which means artisanship, and the Greek word sophos, which means like the love of something. And I made it up because I thought that sounded cool. That's all.
Thanks, Matt. Any other volunteers?
Well, this is, I think, the last Matt Farina. I can go. I do SIG-Apps with Michelle here. I work at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, where I do all kinds of fun things. I've spent the last year and a half doing R&D stuff, which obviously touches on Kubernetes. And I'm in the Eastern time zone. And little known fact, I've now done 2 books and worked at 2 companies with Matt Butcher. So not only do we have a great first name, but we've known each other a while.
World is so small. Jay Zielinski. I know I said I wouldn't call people out, but I wanted to call him out.
Sure. Can you guys hear me? I have a really bad microphone.
Yeah, you're good.
Cool. I'm Jimmy Zielinski. I am a software engineer working on Quay at CoreOS. I, like Matt Boersma, am just trying to stay abreast of what's going on in the application space with Kubernetes, because we see interest in unifying the Quay product with both container images and applications, Kubernetes applications. And I'm based out of New York. I live in Brooklyn. I like very hipster things. That's my unique fact.
I'm Seth. I just wanted to pipe in here. I work at Deus, the VP of Engineering at Deus, and there's Matt Boersma back there. I wanted to call out that Jimmy just said Quay, and he works on the project. We have been having a long, month-long, year-long fight about is it Key, Quay, some other pronunciation. And I tweeted at the Quay account a while back, and I got this answer like, well, it depends on where you live, if you say Key or Quay. So I'm glad that we have one vote for Quay, and it's an official vote.
Yeah, we try not to correct anybody, but the founders call it Quay. So I think it's more clever to call it Key because it was originally the first private registry. And so it was like the key to your containers. But that's my retroactive justification.
Thanks for that clarification. Does anybody else want to volunteer? Last call. Okay, great. This has been a rather relaxing meetup or meeting. I thought that shouldn't be too crazy since we're in the U.S. We're about to be on Thanksgiving break. For those of us who pretend to still be in college, I call it Thanksgiving break. But looking forward, we have some stuff coming up for the next few weeks. The main areas that we'll be touching on are how we're doing on our milestones for 1.5, what action items came out of the in-person meetup at KubeCon. There were several people who volunteered to do demos in the next few weeks that I talked to at KubeCon, so we'll be seeing lots of demos. What we've taken from this particular meeting is that we want to see more use cases, more examples of application developers deploying in Kubernetes and what patterns they're using, what tools they're using, and all of that. So we'll look to doing more of that. And yeah, that kind of sums it up. So have a great Thanksgiving if you're in the US. Have a great week if you're not. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.